Welcome to From the Hat, a PONDcast, the program where every episode is a different topic and all the topics for the shows are drawn from the hat. Anything is fair game. No one's going to get hurt. I'm going to take a risk here. Sometimes I'm right. I done screwed up. Sometimes I'm wrong. I can fail. Rambling musings of two gentlemen. It's going to be all right. So today on our program, we have a special guest, Brandon Baker. Brandon is a longtime friend and former colleague, and he's one that I often refer to and talk to, and we just get along. And so, I don't know, Brandon.
Wow.
Yeah, there you go.
You do have that voice of authority for sure, Ryan.
There you
go. And it feels weird calling you Ryan. I'm just going to defer to Pond, speaking as we've been colleagues in the past. I've always referred to you as Pond, being Mr. Pond.
Yes.
Back then I was Mr. Brandon, now I'm Mr. Baker. I've since moved to Washington State, and I teach third grade up here, and I enjoy our conversations and our contemplations that we have at random. And
we have spent many hours over the last many years rambling musings of two gentlemen. I'm excited to see where we go today. Let's just dive right in. Let's see what we get from the hat. Let's draw it. All right. Oh, a very nice one. This is one of my favorites. This one is by George MacDonald, and the quote is, "To be trusted is a greater compliment than being loved." Brandon, what is your take on that quote?
We grew up loving people. Our family, their friends, friends of families, and, we're told that these people are important in our lives. We love them. But like a lot of my family, I grew up across the country from the majority of my dad's family. And so I didn't feel that love for them when we got together. Because every time I met them, it felt like they were strangers a little bit. And, it's like still, their family, you say, I love you. And, there's a bond there. But coming to trust them and to have relationships with them and really be myself around them was a little bit of a challenge.
All right.
And I'm the opposite of most people. I don't willingly give my love to a lot of people. But one of my deepest feelings is that people are inherently good.
Okay, yeah.
And, I tend to believe in people almost to a fault. And so, that's something that I'm learning now in my life as a 36-year-old man is, we can be a little bit more selecting in who we can trust.
Okay. When you're talking about family, it made me think about the more immediate, familial relationships with, spouse or with my children. And it made me think, like, with this, what would I like? I think all parents want to be loved by their children. That's something that you want. You want to be loved. You want to express love. You want to receive it. But I think in a way, I really value this quote because, you know what? My kids, I'm their parent. And my job is to make sure that they're taught the right things. They're, kind and good and independent individuals. And sometimes they're not very happy with me because of maybe some direction or correction that I might have, bestowed. But the one thing I want, if they're not happy with me, I want them to still know that what I'm doing is for, in my opinion, their best good, their ultimate benefit. And so I think that idea of being trusted is so valuable. I mean, I've always thinking of when my first child was, really small, and I was in the swimming pool or at the bottom of a slide or whatever, and you could say, "All right, let's go, jump or slide," and they knew that they were going to be safe because they trusted you. And I think that's where this quote is coming from, is that idea of like, trust is the ultimate thing. My kids know that when I'm around, they're going to be fine. I had a friend back in my youthful college days that I used to give people, they'd ride on my shoulders and I'd go sprinting down the street, which could be, taken as a little reckless, which, when you're in college, you're a little reckless. But my friend, she always said, she's like, I know, when Pon's around, no one's going to get hurt. And, I always like that, just kind of that idea of, hey, they trust me. People can annoy you and people can, love might not be the ultimate goal all the time. But like with coworkers, colleagues, I've built some great relationships over the years. But love's not really the ultimate goal. I care for them. I want to trust them, and I would like them to trust me. I want them to know that I'm transparent, that what I tell them is for their benefit. It's straightforward. So, I've just kind of run around with that one. But I think the idea of a child trusting their parents, and when they're young, they trust you completely. And it's not until they get a little older that they start to be jaded by the world or some other things come in, they start to go, maybe I'll try this. Maybe my parents don't know everything. And I don't need my kids to think I know everything. In fact, I think it's valuable that I say, hey, I done screwed up. And that's part of them trusting me. Like, I will come to them and say, hey, I messed up. But yeah, I think trust, if you can trust someone, I would agree with George MacDonald here, that the sense of trust and a childlike trust of their parents, they know I've got them taken care of. They don't wake up having to worry about, hey, where's, am I going to have my next meal today? Am I going to have what I need? They come and, they know that there's going to be things around and provided, and, they're not worrying about the adult stressors because they trust me. They have that they know I'm going to be taking care of them. I don't know. That's where my mind went. There's a 5-minute ramble on the idea of trust. And just, I think the idea of a childlike trust is just it's a valuable thing. And that's where my mind went to.
No, I really like it. Like I had mentioned, before we started recording, I'm in a different mindset tonight than I usually am. And I'm looking at things in a different lens. But no, like, you really hit it on the head with that childlike trust, and I love that. Just because our children love us and adore us already, and that's great. But you mentioned the sliding into the pool, and this summer with my middle son Paxton, who's 5, almost 6, we went to Hawaii. And it was very big for him because he has not wanted to learn how to swim for the last couple of years, and not for lack of trying to teach him. But I told him we're not going to bring a life jacket to Hawaii. Mm-hmm. And so he very quickly, Paxton is a very unique individual. He loves people wholeheartedly. Like, he meets everybody and just is full of joy. And like, he's one of those people just radiates happy. And, he is great with people. I think that he's trusted everybody he's met in his life. He was that baby that would go, after the other family at the restaurant because he wanted to go hang out with them at their house. So maybe a little too trusting sometimes, but he's actually, unlike my other 2 children, he has developed this cautiousness and a little bit of apprehension around the water. And so, we went on a hike to a waterfall for my nephew's birthday. And one of the big things that he had wanted to do for his birthday, he was turning 15, was he wanted to jump off this waterfall into a pool. And Paxton usually is very brave, but he's very cautious around that water. Like, he got in the water where he could touch and things like that. And then he went up the waterfall, but he had a really hard time, and in jumping off. And so I swam over and I said, "Bud, I'm right here and I'm going to catch you and I will never let anything bad happen to you." And then the word came up. It's like, "Do you trust me?" And he's like, "Yes." "And what's going to happen?" He said, "I'm going to jump and you're going to keep me safe." I said, "That's exactly what's going to happen." And so he jumped to me, I caught him, and I gave him a ride on my back to where he could touch.
Yeah.
And, for the rest of the trip, he talked about how cool it was that he jumped off a waterfall for the first time. And so it was something that, he had to overcome that fear that he had. And ultimately, he trusted me that it was going to be okay. And this is before he had even seen me jump off.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was glad he was able to take that. And, I hope that, your children are older than mine. Well, some of them. I hope that trust, continues to go. And I very much, with my children, when I had them, I knew that these boys were in my life for a reason. And they're all completely different. But all three know that they can come to me. Like Levi, it's more temporal. Snacks. He needs a stuffed animal out of his crib, things like that. Pax is getting to where he wants me to teach him things and show him things and show me things that he's created. And Elliot, he's 10 years old, but I believe that he's more of like a 50-year-old man trapped in a 10-year-old's body. He's a very old soul. Right. And, I'll go to share a fact. They'll be like, "Actually, Dad, I just read that." I was like, "Oh boy." And he's been correcting me on things since he was 5.
Yeah.
But, Elliot, he's a hypochondriac, and he's just interesting. And so it's like, "Hey, dude, we have to talk this out. And like, I'm going to do everything I can for you." And he's like, "Yeah, no, I know."
Yeah.
And so like, I like that idea of that trust. And, just another instance, like you and I started out our relationship. I was a paraeducator in your classroom in an autism department, and we needed to work together on a daily basis to make sure that not only our students were taken care of, but that all of us were safe as well in the case of any escalations in behavior or anything like that. And so I don't know what it is about your demeanor. Maybe it's the voice of authority, or that you're just such an even-keeled guy that I knew when I walked in that room that I could trust you to guide us in serving those students to the best of our ability. I haven't always felt that way with the teachers that I've worked with.
Right.
And I think that we really built that as we worked together.
Yeah.
And, like that's just another example of, I didn't walk in saying like, "Hey, you big teddy bear of a guy, I love you." No, it's like, you know what? We're going to trust each other and we're going to work together to get things done. And man, like some of the, just the little stuff that happened in that room, I was so grateful for. Whether it was teaching the kids how to make pancakes or anything like that, and CBI trips, going out in the community and helping them learn how to ride the bus and things like that. We wouldn't have been able to do that if we didn't trust each other.
Right. I think that's why trust is so valuable. I mean, I've played a lot of team sports in my life, so I often will come back to team analogies just because of it. But I think relationships are, it's a small team. Either it's professional relationships, personal relationships, whatever. But there's a part of being on a team that you trust other people. And if you can trust that other people are going to do what they say they're going to do, or what you trust them to do, like you're taken care of. And you trust me that I'm going to do what I do, like you're able to work, it takes out the micromanaging or being concerned or worried that someone's not going to pull their weight. And so like a work setting or something like that, it's super, like, trust is, I think, way more important than love or caring. You know, I've had people I've worked with I didn't love very much, but I trusted them completely. And because of that trust, we were able to be very successful with what we did. Some people have personalities that you just don't gel with, but you can still trust those people. And having that trust for someone is definitely, I'd say it's the pinnacle, but it's also foundational. And learning to trust, and I think respect is something that's earned. I definitely agree with what you said earlier about, I think people are inherently good. And people are inherently, like, they're good, they're helpful, they want to contribute, and sometimes they get in their own way, but I think they're trying. I think most people try, at least at the beginning. And it's an important part to instill that trust, to let people know you're good for your word. You're good for what you are trying to do. There's a quote by the recently passed Mark Eaton, who was a center for the NBA team, the Utah Jazz. And he said, when trust is fostered, personal and professional growth is encouraged, and allowances are made for mistakes, people excel and relationships thrive. So it's kind of like this, get the ball rolling. Trust is fostered. You trust each other. And you're encouraging people to make professional growth, to personal growth, to make improvements. And then you realize that, okay, if people are going to be striving to do better, they are going to make mistakes. And that's something that you realize, okay, that's a mistake. It happens. But you're trusting them that they're in the right place. They're trying to get better. And then when you have all those things, people, they do excel, and you get closer. You're knit together as a team. You become tighter as a relationship. And this is I think talking specifically, in professional realms, but I think even with personal ones, Brandon, you and I are both well versed with behavior modification and therapy techniques and things like that. And I often think that people don't realize it, or they don't think about it all the time, because most people go, oh, people want to do what they want. And the reality is that people crave limits. They crave those because it brings security. It brings a level of, like, I know that, like, this limit, this law, this whatever is there to, it's consistency. And children actually thrive when they're given limits, consistent limits. And I think that's because they're able to trust that. They're able to trust the environment. They're able to trust the system. And even when they're upset at maybe a consequence for something, it's still, so whether, they're not happy about it, but it does show, like, through research, that it's still, the positive behaviors will increase even when those negative moments happen, because they trust the system and they trust what's going on. They trust that we are there for their best, for their benefit, whether it's students, whether it's your children. I often think of like a kite. And just the other day, actually, I was at the beach and I was flying a kite with my kids. And as we're flying it, and it's pulling, the kite's got the wind and it's pulling on it. And I was telling them, we were passing the kite around from nephews and cousins and all that, and we said, you can't let go of it, because if you let go, the kite will fall. And there's that level of, like, the kite flies because it is being held back. So that support, that restriction, is actually allowing the kite to stay in the air. I think it's the same for people. The restrictions that people think of and go, oh, well, you're being held back, are actually allowing you to be more successful than if you were in, like, an environment that had absolute chaos.
Yeah. Could you correct me if I'm wrong? But would you mind if I change that word restriction? Because when you say the word restriction, it implies that holding back, right?
Yeah.
To a lot of people, and maybe just replace it with the word boundary.
Totally.
Would that work?
Yeah.
I mean, boundary is a big word that's that people use now. It's like, it's healthy to set boundaries with people. It's healthy to have boundaries when it comes to your self-care, things like that. And it's like, okay, yeah. I mean, with my kids, it's like, yeah, you can eat a snack at the kitchen table. We're not going to eat in the living room because you tend to spill and it's going to end up staining the carpet.
Right.
Right? I'm not. It's just setting that expectation. Well, that's another word we could
Mm-hmm.
use. But yeah, no, I mean that's beautifully put. And I wholeheartedly agree. Sorry to have cut you off, but I was just wondering about the word
Oh, no, I'm all about.
and see if it
Switch
applies.
it around. Yeah, people do like think the other, and they're like, oh, a negative connotation. But boundary, it made me think of like a fortification, a fortress. It actually keeps you safe. The boundaries.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
That's just where my brain visually went. But it also made me think as when you talked about we don't eat over there because you tend to spill. I think as children or as adults, as you're able to take those, I saw a quote the other day by Norman Cousins that said, wisdom consists of the anticipation of consequences. And, I think
I like
that's something that the anticipation of consequences is something that is learned. You learn that through consistent patterns that have happened in your life. And you learn consistency. And I think learning consistency is very similar to trust because so you're able, like wisdom is able to anticipate consequences because you have experienced things in the past and you trust those experiences in the past to have the same result in the future.
Yeah. That's a whole different way of
Right.
looking
And
at
because
trust.
of that, that's why kids, they inherently trust people, but specifically their parents. Because if they have had consistency and they've had a history of being kept safe, it allows them to make those choices based off of that trust. And I think just like you mentioned with your kids, mentioning to your kids, you know what, we're not doing that because, and you can actually bring back the past, like here's some reasons. And to get kids and people to start thinking of consequences really helps shape behavior in a positive way. So many people talk about freedom, and I've always told my kids, I'm like, hey, you've got the ability to choose, and whatever you want to do in a situation is totally up to you. But you can't always choose your consequence. You can choose the action, but the consequence isn't up to you. And this is where wisdom comes in with the consequence, because you can actually have a little forethought and go, if I do this could happen, this could happen, this could happen. And you can shape your behavior based off what you want your intended outcome to be. And we, as adults, as parents, as managers, as coworkers, as individuals in this experience of life, we have that opportunity to allow people to trust us and to bring some consistency. So I think it's a valuable thing to teach people and children, but even I know many adults that might struggle with that as well, to actually say, hey, let's think of the consequences of this action, and let's actually shape our behavior based off of this. Because so many people just, and I'm impulsive. There's always that little very quick calculations going, if I do this, here's my outcomes. And sometimes I'm right, and sometimes I'm wrong. And those outcomes weren't what I thought they were. And then it becomes a learning opportunity and go, oh, okay. And it gets filed away in the life experience, consequences, consistency, whatever you want to say. And I'm then able to trust the history to help shape my future, again, based off of what I learned and things like that.
No, that's a great example. It's like that's one thing I've said it to several people in my life over the last couple of months. It's like I just need consistency.
Yeah.
And like that has been something that really has resonated with me, is how inconsistent some of us are. And it's like I have to catch myself, rough day, lesson plan didn't go well with my kids. It's like, Mr. Baker, what do we do? So I don't know, do whatever you want. And and it's like when I have that mindset, it's like, all right, what little task are we gonna accomplish?
Yeah.
And like I want to bring the positivity back. Like I want to move forward with behavioral momentum. And like I've had people walk into my classroom, Mr. Baker, why did you have all the lights off in your room? Like, oh, you know what? We're practicing some breathing. We're recentering. We're calming ourselves down. Oh, hey, I noticed you were drawing pictures of Baby Yoda and watching a YouTube video. Yeah, we're practicing compliance and building
Right.
behavioral momentum, because once they've complied to this task and they see they can be successful in doing something, we'll move on to math.
Right.
And because they've felt successful, because they've received that reinforcement for doing the proper activity to the best of their ability, I'm never going to walk up to a kid and tell them their drawing's horrible and throw it away. Like the fact, and some kids are like, "Oh man, this is terrible. This looks horrible." I'm like, "Is that the best you can do?" Like, well, yeah. Then you should be proud,
Right.
because the next time you draw this, it's going to look a little bit better.
Yeah.
And if it's something that's very important to you, you keep trying until you do it perfect. And like character is a very big thing in my classroom. I spent a lot of time in community circles, and I work through a lot of restorative practices because I want my students to know at the end of the day I'm there for them.
Right.
It's like, listen, between 8:20 and 2:50, you are my children.
Yeah.
You don't have to love me, but you have to trust me.
But
It's like, Mr. Baker,
yeah.
why are we doing this? Like, it'll make sense. Just give me 5 minutes.
Right.
And it's one of those things that they have to have that buy-in. They have to be like, all right, this guy's not just making jokes up here. I tell a lot of dad jokes.
Oh yeah. I think that's a whole other importance on why trust is so important. What you're talking about with like your classroom is something you're fostering a relationship of trust where they know that they can fail. They know it's okay. Hey, was that your best? Well, great. Like, if it's your best, be proud of it. If it's not, okay, well, let's look at that. And having that relationship of trust where, like, like, I know that you're okay with what I'm doing. Like, I can fail. I'm going to take a risk here, and I can fail, but it's going to be all right because I trust you that you're going to be able to, like, I can take a risk. And it might pan out really awesome, and it might go down in flames. But having a relationship where you trust each other allows for those opportunities. And because it's in those opportunities that you're going to see the most growth, where you're stretching yourself, where you're going, I'm going to try this, and it might fail. Like whether as a student where you're trying something, you take a risk on answering a question, you take a risk on doing a project, on anything, but you take a risk because you trust that your teacher, that the environment, that everyone there is going to be okay with that.
Yeah.
And it's, I think, the same with interpersonal relationships, in that if I trust someone, I'm going to take a risk, and I'm going to say, I might actually come out and say, hey, you know what? I'm kind of upset. I'm upset about A, B, or C, whatever. And you can actually become vulnerable and allow yourself to be vulnerable because of the trust that's there. You're putting that out in a place that you know to be safe.
Yeah.
And that's where you can put it out there and you can kind of analyze it, and let's dig through it and go, all right, where's the authentic truth here? Is it, okay, I said some stupid things, I'm sorry, and I shouldn't have. But you can put it out there and you trust that, okay, I'm going to make myself vulnerable, but you trust that they're going to take care of you. Who you have this relationship with will help you and go, okay, you know what, and that's where like dialogue and compromise and all these things happen in an environment of trust.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think it's so important, because it allows everything else to happen.
Right.
It allows risk taking. It allows growth. It allows failure to create lessons. It allows, all these awesome things that help you become stronger and more unified and like all these great things.
Yeah, no, and just going back a little bit to, and registering my classroom again.
Yeah.
Like you walk into a lot of classrooms and you'll see up on the board like classroom rules.
Right.
And you see this long list of things that teachers consider rules.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's like, you're not going to talk when I'm talking. That's an expectation. Let's get down to the rules. There's 2 rules in my classroom.
Yeah.
I didn't come up with this. I took it from another teacher.
The best things are stolen. Absolutely.
There's the saying in teaching is you don't want to reinvent the wheel.
Yep.
Right. And there's 2 rules in my classroom, and they're all encompassing, and just referencing, the 2 great commandments that all encompass all the other ones. Right. Number 1 in my classroom is be honest. You know what? I'm in your corner no matter what when we're here at school. Something happens out on the playground or here or there, or even in the classroom. If you're honest with me, I'll always back you up.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you exactly, we'll talk about what happened and the possible consequences. I'll walk down with you to the principal's office, and I'll sit there and I'll advocate for you because I know we make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another way we start building that trust. Like, you come to me, like, listen, you before school there's breakfast every morning. So if you need help, my door is open from this time to this time. Instead of going playing on the playground, you come in and see me, I will be here because every kid matters.
Mm-hmm.
And my second, I come from the school I work with. A lot of my kids have several siblings, a lot of big families at my school.
Yeah.
And the second rule is take care of each other.
Yeah.
Because whether you boys and girls like it or not, 180 days of this next year, you're going to spend with me and the people around you. Raise your hand if you have brothers and sisters. And they all raise their hands usually. It's like, do you love your brothers and sisters? Yeah. Do you fight with them too? Like, yeah. But you know what? At the end of the day, you're family. And what does family do? And a lot of them will shrug their shoulders. Like, family takes care of each other.
Mm-hmm.
So if you see your classmate fall over, get knocked over, get their feelings hurt, you're there for them. If you see a friend struggling and you finished your math, raise your hand, Mr. Baker. I'm going to go help him over there. Great. I would rather you help him and build a relationship, show them they can trust you, than me having to do it all. Because guess what? Next year you might be in the same class and you'll know you have a friend.
Yeah.
And, just speaking about failure, there's 2 quotes that I really like. One's up in my classroom. You never fail until you stop trying, by Albert Einstein.
Mm-hmm.
But I actually just looked this up and because I couldn't remember what it said exactly. But my new favorite is also by Albert Einstein. And it is, failure is a success in progress.
Mm.
I really like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Growing up, I also played team sports and, I wasn't a great batter. Didn't know I had vision problems. But, I'd practice.
Yeah.
I'd take those swings. I think I batted a lot better in my wiffle ball league at work.
Oh man,
but
good stuff.
I think that trust is an underlying thing, and I like how you've linked it not only to people, not only to childhood, adulthood, but like those intangible things, and just how important that is in any foundation.
Yeah.
And I think that, a lot of it, you can look at it as like, okay, I can trust this person or I can't.
Yeah.
Or I can trust this or I can't, people that go out there and work together in our community, firefighters and things like that. Like, they have to trust their gear. They have to trust the person next to them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all in our benefit.
Yeah.
But it's just, I don't know. I've never thought of trust at this level, and it's kind of blowing me away a little bit. I kind of want to take a moment and soak it in.
Just go, okay. I like how you talked about that idea of like trust and like protecting others, talking about, family and relationships and others, because that's the thing, or it's not maybe not the thing. It is a thing to have that trust that someone has your back is such a valuable thing. And it for me, it constantly goes back to that idea of taking risks and failing and being supported through failure. You mentioned that one quote. I actually like the one by Winston Churchill where he says, "Success is stumbling from failure to failure with no loss of enthusiasm."
Ooh.
You fail and you're like, okay, well, I mean, good. I've learned. Let's move on. And when trust is fostered, you can fail and you go, okay, all right, let's pick you back up and move. Let's learn. Let's go. And a couple months back, I was out in the mountains and I had this pellet gun. It has a scope on it. And I had noticed as I was shooting these targets that where I was supposed to be lined up, and you got your little scope with the little, crosshairs in there. And I'm like, I'm not shooting where I'm aiming. And so I thought, I'm going to start adjusting this scope. I start going in and I'm clicking it and there's, two knobs. There's a horizontal and a vertical adjustment. And so I start adjusting it and I'd shoot and I'm off. And technically that shot, it's a failure. I'm not hitting the bullseye. And I'd click and I'd maybe get a little closer. And then I'd make too much of adjustment and I'd go way past where I was going. I was like, oops. And the thing I learned about this process is I'm like, it took me, I don't know how many, 18 shots to like walk in this scope to where I finally nailed the bullseye consistently. And the thing is, I was trusting myself. I was trusting that the equipment was doing what it was supposed to be doing. And because of this, like, hey, I'm trusting this, there was no loss of enthusiasm. I saw it as, oh, hey, I'm closer. Oh, that was wrong. Back it up, do this. And I finally got closer and closer until I hit my goal. And it's because of trust. It was just me and a pellet gun and a scope and a target. But the same things apply with people and this. I trusted that everything was doing what it was supposed to, and it helped me to overcome these failures to get to where I reached my goal. And whether you're in a classroom, whether you're talking to a coworker, a colleague, you're on a team of any type, whether it's a work team or a sports team or with your family, having that environment of trust will help you overcome anything and develop the other things. This specific quote we started with talked about love. It helps you develop love. It helps you become it's more rich, it's more honest, it's more, whole in what it is. Because you trust, what's going on and you trust the individuals and you are someone who can also be trusted. And I think that's something that's really important. Like, we need to be the type of people that can be trusted. We're so good at times on projecting to other people and going, well, they're the problem.
Oh yeah, no, for sure.
But how many times do we need to go, okay, I could do better. Am I someone that they can trust? Can they trust me with this? And so that's where, we need to become the type of people that are going to help increase that level of trust. And then we're able to, as we are there, we're also able to accept and trust other people. If you trust yourself, it does make it a lot easier to trust others because, again, we project our perceptions. And so if you know that your heart's in the right place or your mindset or you're there, we're all in this together, it's much easier to trust other people. Sometimes people drop the ball, and I get that. Mistakes happen, but you learn from them and you move on. And in an environment where trust is fostered, it's a lot easier to overcome mistakes because you're not pointing fingers at who made the mistake or what or necessarily why, but you go, okay, well, where can we learn from this? Because we're in this together. Where can we learn and where can we improve and where can we move on? And that's when the kite can fly, just to bring back another metaphor.
No, I mean, that's fantastic. Like, that is such a wonderful outlook. And, as we've been talking, I've been thinking, like, the people that I've had the greatest love for in my life are the people that I've trusted, like, deeply. I'll use my Opa, my grandfather, as my example. I mean, the man has had a tumultuous, to say the least, life. He was born in 1932 in Indonesia, and his father worked on the railroad, and he was the youngest of 13 kids. And so things were already, different for him.
Yeah.
But I believe it was 1941, as a 9-year-old boy, the Japanese occupied Indonesia, and he was put in a concentration camp. I mean, I won't go into detail what he went through. But, I mean, the strength that he had as a child. And then he ended up emigrating to the Netherlands and getting a degree in engineering. And then he and his wife not knowing a word of English, with a new baby girl, came to the United States with $50 in their pockets.
Wow.
And this man started his first job in Long Beach, California as a bellhop at a hotel for $1.25 an hour. Put himself through night school and ended up running, not only learning English and becoming a citizen, but he ended up running a computer department at Nissan Motor for their headquarters here in the United States. And, just seeing him work hard and like, he always had this, he was a yes man. He was, yeah, sure. But, I remember like just telling him like, the things that I wanted to do with my life. And, I always went to him, my parents and I, we had a rocky relationship, and, that was on me. I proved I couldn't be trusted, but I knew that anytime I turned to my Opa, he would support my dreams. One example, coming out of high school, I'd wanted to go to art school, and I had this plan to be a photographer, which I've accomplished, but I couldn't have done it without my Opa. I mean, I remember he got me my first camera. And I remember him looking at some of my photos and just telling me what a great job I did. And he always fostered what I wanted to do. And he didn't say I believe in you or anything, but I knew, anything I needed or anything I needed to talk to him about, he was there.
Yeah.
And sometimes all that was is I'm a verbal processor, and sometimes all it was listening. But that man, I strive to be like him in a lot of ways. Patient, understanding. I think he raised his voice at me once in my life, and that's not easy with a child with ADHD. But I trusted him, and I love him more probably than, well, not my children,
right?
But it's like my oldest Elliot, like earlier this year in January, I got COVID. And the boy's mom, she just kept saying she had to work and didn't come get them for 5 days. And I was like, Elliot, dude, I feel like I got run over by a truck. I'm going to do the best I can to check on you guys, but I need you to help me out with your brothers. And I put my trust in a 9-year-old boy who, I love unconditionally. But, I mean, the house looked like it got hit by a hurricane, but he got them snacks. He got them breakfast. I cooked dinners. He made sure his brothers were taken care of. And I was grateful for that time, because I didn't want to get out of bed. And then all the boys ended up getting COVID too. But, they didn't really have symptoms when they had it, which was good. I was very grateful for it. There were teachers in the school, that believed in me and doing things that I didn't think I could do. And, I've had a lot of I've never had many friends, but I've had close friends. And I know that every friend that I have, I can call and I can count on and I can trust. Yeah. And that is more valuable to me than, any material possession that I have.
That is valuable. And again, that's a great place to close on the importance of when you look back and think of relationships you've had, and the ones that are the valuable ones are the ones you trust, the individuals you trust. And it's through that trust that you're unified, and love and things happen, but you trust them to support, to help, to love, to care. It's a valuable thing. So on that, just a recap of, we're not going to recap everything, but just to remember what the quote was we did talk about today was by George MacDonald. To be trusted is a greater compliment than to be loved. Tune in next time on From the Hat, and we'll see what we're going to talk about as we draw it from the hat. See you on the flip side. Testing. 1, 2, 3.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.